So, Capcom has finally released the long anticipated sequel, Resident Evil Requiem. It's been a while since we received a Resident Evil game. Well, the last one was Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is actually, now think about it, almost 3 years ago. Wow, that's insane. Time flies so quickly. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, anyway, going back, I was just like thinking about it and doing the math and like just how long it just felt personally. That's insane. I mean, I played that game since I was a senior in high school and I'm like a third year in college. That's insane. But anyway, yeah, Resident Evil 4 remake was generally just one of the best remakes of all time. I think it's the best remake that Capcom has produced so far. I haven't played all of their remakes, but from what I've played, it's personally my favorite. And I'm a huge admirer of the original Resident Evil 4. It's still to this day probably my favorite Resident Evil game, just because of its the entire atmosphere that it has. It has this strange balance between humor, just not taking it seriously, kind of feeling like a B movie plot, action, and this very weird and intense atmosphere that is actually horrifying. Like, I played this game even in VR, and Jesus Christ, in VR, that was even more terrifying than it is just playing it in the remastered port. It's genuinely insane. But the remake just did what the original did. It added more smoother elements to gameplay to appeal to more modern audiences, and also just keep intact the more consistent all killer no filler flow, which for the most part really worked out. There are some parts that I didn't like that they cut out from the original, that I think the original had a bit more intensity over the remake, but I feel that the remake is a really good adaptation over the original classic and iconic Resident Evil 4. But aside of the remakes, I mean, they also had the series going with the mainline titles. Of course, the most recent mainline title was RE8, and I actually didn't mind Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, however you want to call it. It was solid, it was fine for what it was back in 2021, but I just wasn't like blown away by it personally. I personally thought that Resident Evil 7 had almost every single element just much better, if anything. Felt like RE8 just wasn't that much of a memorable experience. It wasn't bad by any means, but it was just a solid, you play it once, you don't really think about it again type of game, which is kind of unfortunate given the wait time there was between RE7 and RE8. But honestly, it's whatever at this point. When RE9 was teased back in the Summer Game Fest last year, it was generally just insane to think about that we had confirmation that the next Resident Evil title was going to be released in just a couple of months. Of course, it was guaranteed there's going to be a new mainline title, but it just felt like so long. Despite the remakes filling in the gap, it's like I can't believe this is the next frontier, the next entry for the story. And well, anyway, fast forward now, and we finally got Resident Evil 9 Requiem. So, what do I think about Resident Evil 9 Requiem? I think this is the best Resident Evil game since the original Resident Evil 4, without a doubt. So, just a quick brief summary of what RE9 is about. So, Resident Evil 9, or Resident Evil Requiem, however you want to call it, basically follows two different narratives, well, that ultimately connect in the end. Well, they're always connected, but anyway, we have one side, which is Grace. Grace is our one of our main characters. Essentially, she works for the FBI, and she's investigating a case that has to do with her mother's death. Of course, it brings her a lot of pain and trauma, and she's a little bit reluctant at first, but she feels that she's the most qualified in order to investigate this matter. Little does she know that she's actually the key to something even bigger that goes on in the story. And the other one, we have Leon, which, of course, Leon Kennedy, the GOAT, the OG from RE2, RE4, RE6, you can count all the REs. Leon is sent in this game on a mission to essentially uncover this huge mystery that's going along regarding Grace and regarding this huge project called EPIS, or Elpis, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, that's basically the entire premise of it. I'm being very vague because if I just go on deeper, I might unconsciously say spoilers. And this happened in the past before, especially with the RE games. So I'd rather just not specify the spoilers. That's like the surface level explanation of what I can give, because this game has some drastic turns and plot twists in terms of the narrative, and I don't want to spoil it. I want you guys to enjoy it. But yeah, that's basically what the story is mainly about. I feel from a narrative standpoint, this game, as I said, takes a lot of crazy turns, um, especially like towards the end where it feels just a little bit weird. But I love the themes and topics it discusses, especially how both of these characters are going through trauma and PTSD. And I think the main message of it is just mainly overcoming the past, just looking at it in the eyes and just basically accepting what it is and trying to prevent something as graphic or as disturbing as that from happening to others, basically protecting the future. If anything, I just kind of like both sides. You have Leon, who's aged a lot more. I think he's in his 40s or 50s, and he's completely desensitized. Desensitized, whatever you want to call it, from just his environment in general. Like the way he just kills zombies and stuff, it's like if it's another Tuesday or Monday for him. Like compared to RE2, where he's just scared shitless of what's going on, it's generally insane. I know that RE4 he had a lot more confidence and he's just like kicking and suplexing a bunch of zombies like nothing. But in this game, he's like he has a hatchet and he's like decapitating zombies and just killing them in crazy different ways. That it's almost like he's just having fun with it. Basically, it's genuinely insane. And with Grace, I love how much of a scaredy cat she is because it's like the like her. This is basically her revisiting her traumatic background and past to uncover the secrets of why her mom was killed. Which that isn't a spoiler; it's been discussed in the trailers, by the way. But just basically uncovering her past and the reasoning behind it, and why she's being targeted in this operation. But yeah, I mean, just her gameplay parts, for example, and her narratives, like it's generally just disturbing. Like it generally had me like a scaredy cat playing the entire sections whenever Grace was there, and I also ended up liking it much more than I personally anticipated. I think Grace's section is basically reminiscent of Resident Evil 7, since the game recommends you to play it in the first person view just so it can be a little bit more one on one, just a little bit more like confrontational to give that kind of a scary horror feeling. Um, and I loved it. I love playing the Grace sections. I'm not gonna lie. And this is coming from someone who wasn't that blown away by RE7. I thought the first half of RE7 was great for what it is, but the second half just kind of fell a little bit down. But what I love about RE7 was the environment, the closeness, just the proximity you had between these zombies, and how you were insanely uncertain of what the hell was going to happen. I feel that RE9 captures that essence from RE7 damn near perfectly, and it puts its own little spin with a lot of these enemies having their own very unique and just complex AIs and just their own mentalities. I mean, like a lot of the just like the zombies themselves are very smart. I mean, the way they interact with Grace and Leon, like some of them fight back in weird ways. Some of these like little bosses or creatures that follow you around, like they even make holes in the ceilings and in the walls so they can like kind of like just teleport in front of you and just like catch you where you least expected. Also, the sound design of this game, I know I'm going a little bit all over the place, but the sound design is just amazing. It's stellar. Like you generally like you have so many things going around you. And when you're playing this game on headphones, you're putting in the surround system or whatever, like there's just so many different layers and mixing and stuff that just feels like you're just right there, especially when you're playing the sections with Grace. Like especially during the first person, it's like I feel like I'm right there holding the gun or holding the flashlight or whatever it is, just getting my ass absolutely destroyed by these monsters. I generally just love how up close and personal it felt. I will say though that I guess the complaint that I had regarding the Grace sections, despite me really enjoying it much more than I anticipated it, I mean, it was generally just super fun from beginning to end. I'd say that like more towards the end. This is something kind of coming with Resident Evil games where I kind of lose a little bit of its spark towards the end. But I think it started to get a little bit repetitive or a little bit like, it could have been a little bit better. Just much more towards like the final section of the game, which I feel it's a very short section either way. But that's just kind of a little complaint that I had. Also, there's not that much variety in terms of the weapon selection with Grace, which is a little bit disappointing, but I sort of get it. Since it's much more of a survival horror type, and you're not supposed to have like super fancy weapons. It's supposed to basically mimic and feel like you're helpless and you're limited to what you can use at your disposal. But it would have been nice getting a few additional, I guess, nicer weapons. Just throw it in there in the mix. That's really only the complaints that I had with her gameplay sections. Um, and with Leon, like I said, I love Leon sections. It's just super hardcore action. You're just decapitating zombies left and right. Some crazy batshit stuff like in RE4 almost, but even crazier than that, which is I know it's crazy to even think about. Again, I just love the way it flows. I just think that with Leon, like the way it was organized in this game was a little bit weird, but it kind of made sense. Later on during the game, there's much more Leon than it is in the beginning. I think the first half it's much more Grace than Leon. In the second half, it's much more Leon than Grace. They try to basically combine it, basically give it much more of a balance, which makes a lot of sense, honestly, given again the lore and what happens on later throughout the game itself. But as I said, like once I touched this game, I just had so much trouble, like actually, like just putting down this game. Like I literally had to set myself some boundaries because I was playing this game for like hours and hours on end, like without giving up because of how addictive it was. Like this game is like the most addictive horror game I've played in recent memory, without a doubt. Like I loved the Silent Hill 2 remake. I thought that was addictive within itself. But this game is like injecting more crack, if anything, into the system. Like the balance between the RE7 like atmosphere and the RE4 remake intensity in terms of the gameplay. It's just there's so much variety and there's so much fun to be had within this game, as I was saying. But yeah, in terms of a narrative, I know that I was a little bit vague in the beginning, but I think that the issue that I had more towards the end is that it starts to get a little bit more vague with with like what's going on, like the main premise and stuff, and this huge like mystery involving Elpis or whatever you call it in this project, and Grace being the answer to this, and Leon's past kind of having some direct and indirect involvement with this. I feel that in the end, it just feels like it's kind of like thrown at you, like almost like vomited towards you, and it feels just a little bit like unsatisfying in terms of a narrative sense. Also, like there's like additional characters more towards the final section, and I feel the game kind of wastes that opportunity. Like I don't want to spoil it, but there's like a specific character that they're kind of teasing him to be a bigger part, and then he's just not that much of a really relevant thing. Like the game hypes his character up to be like this, big thing towards the end, but then like nothing really happens. Like if anything, it's just kind of weird. It's really weird. Like it could have been one of the best RE characters or situations. I'm trying to be very vague, so I don't want to spoil. Like in the end, like people would probably finish this game know what I'm trying to say, but they just don't do anything with it. They're just like, oh yeah, you exist. Well, sorry to say this, but there's another character that we actually forgot that he was the main, thing, the main attraction for Grace and Leon to take down. Like it's just weird, man. It's just very, very weird the way they kind of planned it out, and I was a little bit disappointed in that section. Also, the boss fights in this game, they're actually pretty cool, but I felt that the final boss was just like it was insanely easy. Like, I was expecting a little bit more of a challenge. I finished that thing way quicker than I thought I would. That was ridiculous. It was like a baby, a cakewalk, which is a little bit disappointing given the amount of an adventure that we went through just to get to this point. I do really have to give props to the voice acting and just the acting in general in this game. I just really love the delivery of Leon, how cold and stone cold he is in this game. He's like dead serious and just sarcastic at times. Like he's almost like done with this shit. And sometimes he's like just kind of comedic in some parts, like almost an RE4. There's a great balance just between that, if anything. Um, and there's also like this one character that's involved with Leon, which I don't want to give too many hints, but it's just very like iffy in the story. Like I don't know if this is supposed to be someone significant to Leon. It's implied that it is, but the game never expands on it. It's just insanely vague, and I was kind of disappointed. And I give it that Leon's history with, let's just say, special people in his life. I thought that was a little bit disappointing, but anyway, Grace's voice actor is amazing. I love that you can just hear her kind of like whimper whenever you're playing through the game. It's like there's so much terror within that character whenever you're playing as her, and the stutters and stuff just felt so normal. And you just felt immersed within her character. I love the performances of the villains, the other characters involved as well. Just kind of gave this eerie, like you don't know what's gonna happen here type of vibe. Like the plot itself, like felt like bigger than the world type, almost like a B movie similar to a Resident Evil 4, but like in a way that it was dark, mature, and like just fun at the same time. Kind of has some campiness thrown in there too. I will say, in terms of the technical development of this game, well, I do love the audio design. The music was also really good for some of these parts. the gameplay as well, how the way it evolved and went back and forth with Grace and Leon. I think the optimization, at least for the PC port, is kind of a mess, especially when it comes to the cutscenes. I don't know why, but my PC was tweaking when it comes to the cutscenes. Like, there were so many issues in terms of the audio being desynchronized in almost every single cutscene that this game had. Like, it was a way that I just had to start reading the lips to see if it was actually synchronized. Because there are moments where the audio would just completely cut off, then go back in, but then be like desynchronized by like a span of like 5 seconds or something. And it was so weird and awkward to the point that I just started laughing at some of the most serious cutscenes in this game. And I had to like keep on constantly rewinding, closing in Steam and back and forth, and that still wouldn't solve the problem. I tried almost everything that I could to fix the problem. It just sometimes it would work, and most of the time it wouldn't. It was generally kind of embarrassing. At times, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like RE4 never had this issue with me. Like none of the Resident Evil games had this issue in my PC. Like my PC could run almost any game smoothly. It ran Clair Obscure for God's sakes, like damn near perfectly with maybe some front frame stutters. I'd say for the most part, this game didn't give me that much of an issue in terms of the frame rate, if anything. Sometimes it has some dips, but it wasn't too like, like, wow, this game is about to crash. I just think the audio desynchronized thing was just super weird in terms of the cutscenes that are just very distracting. But for the most part, yeah, that's kind of like the only issues I really had in terms of a technical level. But yeah, overall, I love this game. I generally love this game so much. I just had such a blast. It got me nostalgic in some parts, especially with RE2 Remake and RE4, especially with what they do later on the story. That really kind of like brings you back into that era, which I thought was freaking phenomenal, honestly. I loved it so much. But yeah, I think this game has a healthy balance between horror and action. I think it masterfully handled Grace and Leon as characters, introducing Grace into the mix, and just having a veteran such as Leon thrown in the mix here, and having like they paid like actual respect and homage to Leon. They treated his character, they didn't bastardize his character development. They actually gave him more attributes and more points. Despite the story having some questionable bits, I personally thought that it was good enough for what it tried to do for the game. And I think that this game is just an all-timer. It's generally just like the new gold standard in terms of horror games. And I'm really interested to see what Capcom is going to do next within the Resident Evil franchise, given just how monumental this game feels at the moment. But yeah, what do you guys think of this game? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, turn notification bell on so there's an upload from me, subscribe as well. And yeah, see you guys next time. Peace out and play Resident Evil Requiem.